The Harry Potter series has been revolutionary to say the least. People remain just as passionate even years after the release of the last book. Relationships are a big theme in Harry Potter. Whether they're friendships, family relationships, or romantic ones, it was made clear that love was key to Harry's success. Fans have appreciated the relationship development in the series, although some have been controversial. The romantic relationships in Harry Potter have been arguably one of the most debated on topics in Harry Potter. A highly anticipated romantic relationship in the novels were that of Ron and Hermione, whose relationship was built upon for all 7 books, finally getting together in the last one. Although there have been a lot of people who do support this relationship, there are also people who do not believe it was a relationship that was meant to happen. This has led to many conversations and debates regarding the relationship and the character traits of both characters in order to justify why they simply aren't compatible. This video will challenge those who oppose the Ron and Hermione relationship by providing specific ideas and examples straight from the novels. Now, it's worthy to note that this will be focusing on the books and not the movies. The movies are partially to blame for the misrepresentation of Ron and Hermione and their relationship. Now let's dive into each of the characters, starting with Ron Weasley. There has been an overload of mischaracterization when it comes to Ron Weasley. Ron Weasley is a complex character with many qualities, so it is easy to focus on crude generalizations rather than considering each characteristic that makes Ron Weasley such a complex character. Ron Weasley is the youngest of 5 boys, and he has one younger sister. He befriends Harry Potter, who is the most famous boy wizard in the wizarding world, in his first year, and he has been overshadowed his whole life. He shows that he has a thirst to prove himself from the first book. It is easy to focus on this part of him, since it is a recurring theme in the books. This has led to the false belief that Ron aspires to be better than his counterparts and cannot deal with those in his life being better than him. This argument has been presented to present the idea that Ron and Hermione cannot work simply because Ron would not be able to handle how Hermione, a very intelligent woman, would be successful in her life. Now, this is a tragic misinterpretation of this character trait. What many people have failed to recognize is that Ron Weasley never once wanted to be better than his counterparts. All Ron ever wanted was to not be overshadowed. This meant that he wanted to be recognized for his own personal achievements. He had never once hoped that someone downplay their own achievements in order to lift himself up. Take, for example, in Half-Blood Prince, when Harry describes that both Hermione and Ron are upset with regards to his recent success in potions. However, whereas Hermione is indeed upset because of Harry's newfound success, Ron is upset because Harry did not share his tips. Ron was never upset with Harry's success, but rather the lack of his own. Ron is used to others being successful, with his older brothers being Quidditch captains, head boys, and prefects, so he is not maladaptive towards this, but he rather aspires to show his own success as well. This is a perfect dynamic. He is used to successful people. He is surrounded by them. He is not adverse to them in any way or shape or form. Hermione needs someone who is familiar with success. She is an intelligent person. She needs someone who has been exposed to it. In addition, Ron is always the character to point out Hermione's intelligence and compliment her and defend her for it. Take, for instance, this moment in Order of the Phoenix. How do you remember stuff like that? Asked Ron, looking at Hermione in admiration. I listen, Ron, said Hermione with a touch of asperity. So do I, but I still couldn't tell you exactly what. This shows that Ron is genuinely in awe of Hermione's intellect. He isn't bitter towards it. He even defends her when Snape calls her a know-it-all. The reality is that even though he may tease her about it sometimes, he genuinely is attracted to Hermione's intelligence. The fact is that people have grossly mistook Ron's desire for success to be one that competes with Hermione's. However, it is shown countless times in the books that Hermione is not one of the people that Ron is trying to compete with. Quite the contrary, Hermione is actually one of the people that Ron is trying to impress. The locket even reveals this in the last book. Take, for instance, when Ron is eager to tell Hermione about making the Quidditch team. Hermione is always a person that Ron wanted to impress, not compete with. Now on to Hermione. She's a very competitive girl by nature. However, it's interesting to see how her dynamic is with Ron and Harry. She is consistently pushing them to study. In Order of the Phoenix, she even buys them study schedules. She helps Ron with his homework, she helps Harry with his homework, she gets Harry to start Dumbledore's army, she confronts McLaggen when Ron tries out for Quidditch in Half-Blood Prince. This is a big deal. Hermione likes to be the best, and she also likes to follow the rules. We see this competitive nature take over in Half-Blood Prince, but we also see that Hermione is different when it comes to Ron and Harry. She really does want them to succeed. She doesn't really care too much about how other people do. She likes to be the best, but she pushes them. Ron has really had no one in his life to do this, to push him. It's always just assumed that he should not do something or that it doesn't matter if he doesn't. He's just overlooked. Hermione doesn't do this. She doesn't just expect him to do good in OWLs, she pushes him to study for it. This is so important, and I think it's something that is neglected a lot, because if you've ever accomplished anything in your life, or you've tried to accomplish anything in your life, you'll most likely come across those kind of people that are only there at the finish line, but not there for the race. What I mean by this is that there's always people who are going to be first to claim to your success or reprimand you for your failures without realizing the work it takes you to get there. It's easy to forget how hard you work for something and give up when you're exposed to consistent criticism by people who don't even recognize the work it takes you to get to where you need to go. Hermione is ideal in this situation. She isn't just, oh, why didn't you get this grade? She's huge on the you need to study, Ron, and she pushes, almost to the point of nagging. But it's in a way of care. It shows that she truly wants success for Ron and for Harry. Ron needs someone like this in his life. He needs someone that shows that they support him, and Hermione does make it clear that she does. Another thing that can be said for both Ron and Hermione is that they're very caring, particularly for each other. In Goblet of Fire, Ron is quick to be concerned about Hermione when she upsets Rita Skeeter, or he tries to get her away from the Dark Mark in the beginning of Goblet of Fire during the Quidditch World Cup. He's quick to run over to Draco when Draco puts that spell that enlarges Hermione's teeth. Hermione in Chamber of Secrets, she's quick to run over to Ron when his slug spell reverses onto himself. She runs over to the hospital wing when he gets poisoned. She even puts all the lavender banter behind her in Half-Blood Prince. For this reason, it is clear that they care a lot about each other. For instance, look at this quote directly from Deathly Hallows when they're found by Snatchers. "Get off her," Ron shouted. There was an unmistakable sound of knuckles hitting flesh. Ron grunted in pain and Hermione screamed, "No, leave him alone, leave him alone." They are clearly each other's weak spots. Now, another thing is their humor. Now, people are quick to say that Hermione isn't funny and that Ron is. But they neglect Hermione's own sense of humor when they say this, because it actually does really complement Ron's. Ron may be the funnier one and the less serious one, but we see loads of examples in the books where their humor complements each other quite well, like when Hermione calls Malfoy a twitchy ferret. The balance of their humor is ideal because we see that Ron is capable of bringing out Hermione's fun side, and that Hermione is capable of bringing out his serious side, creating a perfect balance between the two. I think it's worthy to note that Hermione is not a boring character, especially as the books progress. She is a Gryffindor after all, and Ron is partially responsible for bringing out this endearing side of her. They can joke around quite well, and they have plenty of lighthearted and funny conversations throughout the books. Hermione always kind of finds Ron funny, and she's always laughing at his jokes. This means that she gets his humor, and she's capable of having fun with him, which is what Hermione kind of needs in her life. Without this balance, she can easily become a stressful ball of anxiety who does not know how to take a deep breath. Ron gives her this diversity that makes her strictly less know-it-all and more of a diverse character who is intelligent. It's easy for intelligent people to hide behind facts or their intelligence in an almost robotic sense. This is limiting because intelligence should never be a personality trait, but rather a part of one's personality. The fact that Ron is able to make Hermione realize this shows just how good this relationship is for both their developments. Now, speaking of intelligence, another thing that I have to point out is their intelligence. Yes, their intelligence. Many people argue that Ron and Hermione are simply not at the same intellectual level to be in a relationship. Now, although measuring intelligence in no way justifies a relationship, this could not be more incorrect. Ron, Harry, and Hermione are consistently required to have serious conversations in the books. They need to deduce clues, find out things, and determine how to win against a very intelligent Dark Lord. They all contribute to these conversations. The Horcrux conversations, the one regarding Dumbledore, Voldemort, the Order, all of them. All of them pitch in ideas. It's always give and take with the trio conversations. Ron always provides an educated insight to the conversations. Ron can keep his cool in situations, and Ron and Hermione are the characters to educate Harry on magical matter. Take, for instance, when Harry finds out that Hagrid is half-giant. Harry has no idea why this is controversial, whereas Ron, who is a pureblood, and Hermione, who has read every book regarding the magical world, knows exactly what is going on. Ron educates them about this world because he's lived this world. This is actually the only knowledge with the magical world that Hermione herself lacks. She can read a million books, but she still misses out on things like how the ministry really works or what a mudblood is. Ron is the one to educate Hermione on these matters. When they combine both of their intellects, you get a power couple that has both the book knowledge and the lived knowledge. They both learn from each other. Ron is actually an intelligent character. Everyone in the trio is intelligent, and this makes sense because you need intelligent characters in order to defeat the main antagonist. Ron's a chess whiz after all. He shows to be a more than competent wizard. He disarms Bellatrix. He tells Hermione to light her wand on fire when she herself loses her cool in the situation. He never really shows a situation in battle where he isn't able to defend himself. The only times we see examples of his lack of intelligence, per se, is when it comes to studying for things like history of magic, which Ron and Harry simply find too boring. It's not a matter of lack of intelligence, but lack of interest. Ron is made a prefect along with Hermione, which shows that he is competent enough to have that status in the first place. Ron and Hermione's arguments stem from intellectual debates regarding important topics like the wizarding prejudices that exist. They have intelligently stimulating conversations consistently throughout the novels. Ron is the one to tell Harry to use his liquid luck in Half-Blood Prince, and he's the one who thinks about the basilisk fangs in the Deathly Hallows. Hermione isn't not aware of his intelligence. She's aware that he's intelligent. She's observed him. She tells Ron a numerous amount of times about his arguments, and she agrees with him a numerous amount of times about his opinions, which means that she values them. Now that I've approached their character traits somewhat individually, I'm going to go on now to the actual relationship development throughout the series. Book by book, starting from the first to the last. Now let's start with the first book, The Philosopher's Stone. Ron is not keen on Hermione in the first book. He genuinely thinks that she's annoying. Harry agrees as well, because Hermione gives off kind of a pompous attitude. We can equate the way Hermione acts about school to the way Draco acts about being a pureblood Slytherin. Now, Hermione is not intending to do this, but rather she does not know how as a Muggle-born to approach these wizards and witches. She does it over-enthusiastically, so it comes across as if she's trying to show off. However, when Hermione overhears Ron talking about her, she ends up crying and running to the bathroom, and he ends up feeling guilty. Ron doesn't just say, oh, let her cry. He does feel uncomfortable. It's noted that he looks uncomfortable at the idea that he upset her. He was not intending for her to actually hear what he was saying. And this makes sense, because Harry and Ron are indeed the good guys. They don't have it in them to actually intentionally hurt somebody like the Slytherins do. Now, Hermione gets locked in the washroom with the troll, and Ron and Harry come to save her. Hermione shows her true Gryffindor behavior by taking the blame for them, and this ultimately gets Ron and Harry's respect. This is a moment that Ron and Harry realize that Hermione isn't really a bad person. She's not a Malfoy, she's not intentionally pompous. She likes school, and she didn't know how to approach people. Now, when Hermione is willing to help Harry with the stone, this further shows her Gryffindor behavior, and from then on out, the three of them become friends. Ron has went from not liking her to being her friend. The literacy irony in this is nothing new, and this is a perfect example of such. Now on to the second book, The Chamber of Secrets. Here we see that Ron, Harry, and Hermione have become established friends. Harry has written to Hermione and to Ron, and the two of them have written to each other and to Harry over the summer. Harry doesn't get the letters because Dobby collects them, but this shows how their friendship is solidified. They are still in talks during the summer when they don't have to see each other because they are official friends. Harry ends up getting rescued by Ron, and when Ron and Harry go to Hogsmeade, Ron intentionally sets out to meet with Hermione. He even told his parents about Hermione in some great deal, as his parents are familiar with her now. He is also the first person to notice Hermione's crush on Lockhart. Some people have speculated that this shows hints of jealousy, and it might. Ron is not impressed when Hermione has a crush on Lockhart. He shows genuine dislike and distaste at the idea that Hermione would be the type of girl to doodle hearts and develop crushes. This could be because he has a secret crush himself, or it could be because he just doesn't like her doing that, and it surprises him that she does. One thing no one can fail to recognize is that Ron is not impressed by her crush. Now, the second book is actually filled with Ron showing care for Hermione. He immediately stands for her defense when Draco calls her a mudblood, and is absolutely devastated when she's petrified, facing the Forbidden Forest and his arachnophobia for her. Hermione also shows care for Ron herself. She's devastated at Ron and Harry for driving the flying car, and she only starts talking to them again when Ron gets his howler from his mom. This shows that she was more concerned for their safety rather than anything else. She also runs to Ron right away after he gets hit by his own slug curse. She is clearly concerned about Ron. This shows just how much they've grown to mean to one another, and just how much they do value one another now. Now on to Prisoner of Azkaban. Hermione is first introduced into the book by writing a letter to Harry, and it's filled with information about Ron, showing that they have had a high amount of communication. Harry then bumps into just the two of them chilling in an ice cream parlor. This shows how they are very much capable of hanging out together. Alone, without Harry. When Harry can't go to Hogsmeade, Ron and Hermione go together, and when they come back, they look as if they've had the time of their lives. This is so overlooked because there's an assumption that Ron and Hermione never get along. They bicker, but they're best friends. If they hadn't gotten along, they wouldn't have bothered talking to each other until now. Of course, we see the outcourse of their fight because of the Scabbers and the Crookshanks situation. Harry does also stop talking to Hermione because she gets his broom confiscated. This devastates Hermione, and we see just how dependent she truly is on Ron and Harry's friendship. Ron, however, shows out to be rather mature in the end. When it comes down to Buckbeak's trial, even though he thinks that Hermione's cat has killed his rat, and she's refusing to apologize out of stubbornness, he agrees to help her with Buckbeak's trial. Hermione, now realizing that Ron is indeed being the bigger person, hugs him and cries, also apologizing. The moment she apologizes, Ron forgives her and tries to brush off his beloved pet's death. Now, this is so important because Ron and Hermione are just 13 here. This shows a huge level of maturity on both ends. Ron shows just how capable he is of critical thinking. When things get serious and they realize Buckbeak might be getting executed, Ron is able to put his banter behind him. Hermione is also able to put her stubbornness behind her. This shows so much good signs of a healthy relationship, because in a relationship, arguments are bound to happen. But here, they both show that they are capable of communicating and solving their issues. There are a couple of other central points to make about the relationship in this book. The first one being how Ron shows genuine care towards Hermione. He is genuinely concerned about her school schedule. He compliments her and he tells her that although she is indeed brilliant, she is going to overexert herself. This is important because it further exemplifies how Hermione needs someone like Ron in her life. He was right. She did indeed overexert herself to her point where she needed to time travel in order to keep up with her classes. This is unhealthy behavior. Ron is also the first to notice that she goes missing and she appears randomly. His concern for her is there in a very genuine way, and Hermione needs that. Ron isn't just using her, he isn't just letting her do what she wants because he could care less. He's expressing his concerns because he's genuinely worried about her. Hermione is a workaholic. She needs someone to genuinely care about her well-being, which Ron shows that he does. Now onto Goblet of Fire. The book starts off endearing because Ron invites her to stay at his house for the Quidditch World Cup. He brings her into his family, even knowing that she isn't a fan of Quidditch. He really wants her to enjoy the parts of the wizarding world that he thinks is enjoyable. This shows that he actively wants Hermione to be a part of his life, not just with school, not just with Harry, but in every aspect. Ron has his epiphany moment in the book, the legendary moment when he realizes that Hermione is indeed a girl. This is his aha moment. By this time, Ron and Hermione have shown that they have a soft spot for each other. But Ron is unaware of what that truly means. We see the moment Ron realizes he likes her. His jealousy is evident even before he knows it's Krum that she's going with to the Yule Ball. He doesn't stop asking Hermione who she's going with, and when he sees that she's with Krum, he's furious. Another thing to note is that Ron doesn't look surprised that Hermione looks beautiful. He just looks angry. I think it's worthy to note this because it shows how Ron has felt for the typical everyday Hermione, and that her being dolled up doesn't really render a different reaction from him that makes him act differently. He was jealous from the moment that he heard Hermione was going with someone else. Hermione is also guilty of jealousy. She's outwardly jealous when Fleur kisses Ron on the cheek. This shows that they're both possessive over each other, and this is because they truly want to be together. Now on to Order of the Phoenix. Here we know Ron and Hermione have been spending the whole summer together, without Harry. They've bonded, they've discussed serious matters, Voldemort is back, and everything is intense. Ron becomes prefect along with Hermione. This means a lot of downtime with just each other. Ron gets on the Quidditch team. We see how eager he is to tell Hermione about it. We're also seeing more mature dialogue between the two of them. Hermione is shown really valuing Ron's opinions. Even Harry notices how their exchanges are a lot like Mr. and Mrs. Weasley's. Ron and Hermione have established their feelings by now. Ron knows he likes Hermione, and Hermione knows she likes Ron. They don't know that they like each other, but they're well aware of their own feelings. They find solace in each other, and you see just how they're essentially acting like parental figures to Harry in this novel. Now on to Half-Blood Prince. It looks really promising here. We have Hermione staying at Ron's house before the summer. Hermione smells Ron's hair in the love potion. She even goes out of her way to confront McLaggen because she wants Ron to make the team. She's seriously rooting for Ron. Then she awkwardly brings up this idea of him going to Slughorn's party with her. She doesn't really say it in a way that's obvious. She says, "But if you'd rather I had asked Miss McLaggen," to which Ron responds to, "No, I wouldn't," in a completely different tone. And then we have Ron finding out that Hermione kissed with Victor Krum. He's in a mood with everyone after that, and this is his 16-year-old boy way of dealing with the fact that he's hurt. Ron is possessive over Hermione in a sense. He's irrational at this point because, well, he's just found out that the girl he likes has been with Krum in that way. It adds something. If it wasn't just a dance, she kissed him. Ginny goes out of her way to even say that they snogged. This flame is further ignited when Hermione believes that Ron has taken the liquid luck, and that's why he did good at Quidditch. At this point, Ron is just done. He ends up just feeling like there's no point. Hermione doesn't like him. Hermione kissed Krum. She would never like him. She doesn't have any faith in him. She hasn't shown that she outwardly likes him. He gives up and he sees Lavender, who has an obvious crush on him, and he gets with her in a way that was kind of to spite Hermione in a sense. And the moment he does, Hermione goes insane. Completely ruthless. She becomes completely against him. Ron originally was not being too great to Hermione, but Lavender ends up being kind of a stepping stone. He's in a more lighthearted mood because he's not so bent over Hermione, as he has his own thing going on now. She was with Krum, now he has Lavender. They're kind of equal in a sense, in his 16-year-old boy way of making it equal. Now, Ron doesn't really talk to Hermione, and Hermione doesn't really talk to Ron because of the Lavender situation. Hermione becomes furious. She sets birds on him. She makes fun of him. She makes fun of Lavender. After Christmas break, we see Ron attempting to be more nice and friendly with her, but Hermione still remains bitter towards him. However, she ends up putting her anger aside when he gets poisoned, and they end up becoming friends again. It doesn't take long after that for Ron and Lavender to break up, much to Hermione's pleasure. After Dumbledore's death, there is this huge change in the overall theme of the relationship in the story. We see Hermione crying into Ron's shoulder as he strokes her hair, also crying. This is not something we tend to see between Ron and Hermione. The three of them now know that this is a life or death situation, and Ron and Hermione know that they're saying bye to Hogwarts. Now come Deathly Hallows. We see the introduction of Ron and Hermione coming to disguise themselves as Harry. When Ron comes back later than expected, Hermione wastes no time running up to him. He pats her on the back, and this is something we notice from Half-Blood Prince with the physical affection when he stroked Hermione's hair in the last book. There is a huge difference in the physical affection we've seen from them. It shows outward physical affection between the both of them. Ron later gives Harry a book called 12 Failsafe Ways to Charm Witches, explaining that it has all you need to know about girls to understand them. The readers are amused when Hermione begins to cry and Ron goes to comfort her, giving Harry a reproachful look about his lack of tact. Harry also finds this amusing because Ron is not the typical character who shows excessive chivalry to Hermione. This is a lot of character development for Ron. Although Ron has always been good and caring of Hermione, he's never been an outright gentleman to Hermione, and he's always kind of treated her as a friend. But here, the readers see a Ron who is putting his arm around Hermione all the time when she cries, always complimenting her magic, having no problem complimenting how good she looks at the wedding, and not even hesitating to ask her to dance. It's a very mature Ron. This is a Ron we've never seen. Why? Well, because this is the Ron that knows he likes Hermione. He's also 17, and he knows he wants to get her. The previous versions of Ron knew he liked Hermione, but he was always scared, confused, didn't know how to approach her, and he was a lot younger. Now we see a Ron who knows that this is a life or death situation, and he's made his choice. He wants to gain Hermione's love. Hermione is absolute putty in his hands. She takes his compliments, is eager to dance with him. She soaks it all up. The thing Ron probably failed to recognize is that Hermione has always liked Ron, even when he wasn't Mr. Chivalry. So him being this way is just the icing on top. He insists Hermione to sleep on the couch and him on the floor. He's outwardly sweet to her. This is a romantic Ron, and Hermione is melting into it. She is pleased to dance with him. When he's fretting about the Cattermoles, she has the biggest look of tenderness on her face. She doesn't even let Harry be mean to him when Ron gets splinched. They are both head over heels in this book. Now, things get rocky when they get the locket, and Ron has bled half to death. He has lost a lot of blood, he is weak, they have no food, and now there's an evil Horcrux whispering how Harry and Hermione would be better off without him, and how Hermione and Harry love each other. He's not stupid. He knows that his injury is holding them back. Harry has no idea what he's doing. When Ron finds out his sister is in the Forbidden Forest, Harry just brushes it off, and this angers Ron to a point where he wonders if Harry even values him or his family. The locket is whispering that he doesn't, and then he leaves. He disapparates. When the locket is finally off of him and he's had the chance to cool down, he tries to come back right away, but he gets taken by snatchers. So he's forced to keep spying to look out for Harry and Hermione, who have put enchantment spells that are hiding them. Harry and Hermione are both miserable without Ron. They barely talk to each other. Hermione is reduced to tears because Ron was the only one keeping her sane in all of this. Then Ron returns, and he destroys the locket. He saves Harry's life, and Harry tells him just how much they mean to him, and how Hermione is like his sister, and they hug. When he returns, Hermione is furious. She feels betrayed. He tells her that the only reason he was able to find them was because the Deluminator had Hermione's voice coming out of it. Her voice saying, well, his name. He explains that the voice was encapsulated by a ball of light which goes straight to his chest and causes him to separate to where they are. Hermione is still furious and cold with him, until they get taken by snatchers and have to go to Malfoy Manor. Here we see just how much Ron truly loves Hermione. When they try to take Hermione away, Ron screams not to touch her, and when Bellatrix wants to take her for questioning, Ron begs to take him instead. Ron has always been a heroic character, but it is clear in this moment that Ron values Hermione's life over his own. The most heartbreaking moment is when Ron begins crying as he punches the wall. Thinking of that alone gives me chills. Harry is trying to remain calm so he can figure out a way to get Hermione out of there, to get them out of there, but Ron is so overwhelmed by his love for Hermione, in that moment he doesn't care about anything else but Hermione. When Dobby comes and they escape, Ron wastes absolutely no time. He immediately disarms Bellatrix. No signal from Harry, no plan, he just runs and thinks with emotion. This actually ends up being beneficial because Harry catches the wand, Ron runs over to Hermione to grab her when Dobby releases the chandelier. It is clear to see that Ron's only priority in this situation is to get Hermione safe. When they separate and leave, Ron is the one who's checking up on her. He's the one making sure she's okay. We see just how caring and protective he is over Hermione. Now when Hermione's better and they have to go get the cup, they do so. And of course, it's Hogwarts after that. The battle has officially started. They know that they need to get one more Horcrux, and they know it's at Hogwarts. Voldemort is coming, and any of them could die at any moment. Upon the battle, Ron and Hermione disappear for a while, much to Harry's annoyance. However, when he finds out they've destroyed the cup because Ron thought of the basilisk fangs in the Chamber of Secrets, we see him cheering up. Now we see Hermione outwardly praising Ron, something she doesn't do often. Ron then thinks of the House Elves. This is such a huge character arc, because Ron, who originally thought Spew was a joke, actively wants to save the House Elves. He's learned from seeing Dobby and Creature and how Dobby took his own life, and he's listened to Hermione, and he's changed his opinion. And he realizes that the true value that House Elves have are not really appreciated. So he tells Harry that they need to be put into safety, and they can't die for them. Hermione, who is absolutely overtook by Ron and has been advocating for the House Elves from her 4th year, runs up to Ron and kisses him. Ron responds enthusiastically and lifts Hermione off her feet. They are having a heated moment in the middle of a war. In that moment, nothing else matters to them, just each other. Harry tries to break them apart quietly, but they remain locked in their passionate embrace. It's only when Harry yells do they pull apart. Harry awkwardly asks if they can just hold up their pent-up feelings until they find the diadem, and they do. And then it all happens. The war, they think Harry dies, their screams were the loudest, then he comes back, the war is done, Voldemort is dead, they win. Of course, we don't get to see the aftermath until the epilogue. But the epilogue reveals that they do in fact get married and they have 2 children, Rose and Hugo, which shows that their relationship ended up being quite successful. Looking at each individual character trait as well as the development goes between the both of them in all of the books, it is clear to see that Ron and Hermione make perfect sense, and that people who debate against Ron and Hermione have failed to recognize the development between the both of them in the books and how they truly have made each other grow. This is ideal for a relationship, and it clearly shows as they've had a successful one, providing 2 kids and a long-lasting marriage. Please like and subscribe if you like this video, and let me know if you want any more analysis regarding the Harry Potter series.